Here's an almost rhetorical question for you. I say almost rhetorical. It's pretty rhetorical, actually. Would you give your child something which you knew was going to be harmful to them? Of course you wouldn't. You're a great parent. So why is it that we give our children cell phones? It seems that the research is in that, just because everybody's got them doesn't mean that it's good for them. Joining us on the program now, Tim Wilson from the Maxim Institute. Tim, kia ora, good morning. Thanks for your time today.
Yeah, morena, Andrew. And I think for a while that research was like, oh, there's a bit of correlation, but it keeps the kids quiet. But now increasingly it's tilting towards causation. We're seeing that book written by Jonathan Haidt, an American author and psychologist, saying that there is, the effects are staggering for cell phone use in terms of anxiety, depression, teenagers who are on their smartphones, they have fewer friends, they spend less time with their families. All the things that nurture us at that crucial time are pulled away when kids are on smartphones, on social media. And there's some other really interesting studies as well that back this up.
Is it, because there's different ways of slicing this, Tim, is it smartphones themselves or is it what we do with them? Is it smartphones or is it the use of social media on smartphones, or is it the internet, but it's the internet which is always in our hand or always in our pocket or perhaps under our pillow when we should be sleeping? Is it the smartphone or the apps that go with it, perhaps?
I would say, and Jonathan Haidt says, don't give your kids a smartphone until, it's basic phones up to 14. And then after 16, you can let them go on social media.
Okay.
I guess the sociologist Sherry Turkle says we're forever elsewhere, so we're not actually where we are when we're connected to the internet. I would say that the internet is the problem because you have this seething trough of misery, despair, shame, malice, rancor, and judgment. Yeah, and that's the good stuff. That you can have access to at any time you feel slightly distracted, slightly at a loose end. And I got to say, what we're depriving kids of one of the greatest gifts of childhood, which is boredom. Yeah. Boredom forces you to be creative, constructive, to do things. One of our kids wanders around saying, I'm bored all the time. I say, it's a gift.
It is.
Seize it and use it.
Exactly. Now, I remember back in the day when I was a teenager and slightly older than a teenager, if I was bored and had some time on my hands, I'd reach into my pocket and pull out a packet of cigarettes. And a cigarette took about 5 minutes to smoke, and then that was my way of passing the time. And also I was addicted to nicotine. It would almost be better for me to pull a packet of cigarettes out of my pocket than a cell phone. Or am I stretching this too far, Tim?
There's two issues here. Obviously, the physical side of physical addiction, not good. But then again, cell phone addiction can be physical as well because you're getting dopamine hits. So there's a physical constituent to that. Look, probably if you're on the cell phone and you're addicted to that, you will remain physically somewhat healthy, but you will more likely be more depressed, more anxious, more disconnected, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas if you're on the durries, you'll probably have to start to front up to yourself at around 36 like I did. When did you quit? Or have you quit?
I have quit, yes.
It's okay. What's that smouldering in the corner, Andrew?
That's my brain on fire. No, I spent some years in England and the weather was just so bad I just couldn't be bothered going outside, which certainly helped me in that regard. I think the reason that I make this almost ridiculous comparison, Tim, is because the science is in for cigarettes. We know it kills people. We put the photos on the packets. We're doing everything that we can to make them not accessible, not just to young people, but to discourage adults.
But to anyone.
To anyone. The science is now in for cell phones as well. We've got some catching up to do, it seems.
Yeah, and look, the Surgeon General, the US Surgeon General, just last week called for there to be the kind of warnings around social media that you see on cigarette packets. Wow. So now, is that a disincentive for people? Because you raise a big issue there, which is actually we've got a huge cohort now who are, I would say, psychologically and somewhat physically addicted. That's going to be problematic. But the first step is to recognize the harm, recognize the threat, and to start to take action. And as parents, that means having a hard conversation if they've already got them.
Yeah.
But the conversation is not that much easier if they don't, because everyone else seems to.
This is the big challenge, I think, for parents, because it almost seems like the genie's out of the bottle. Do you want your child to be subjected to social ridicule because they don't have a cell phone like everybody else? When everybody else is connecting on social media, everyone's being invited to parties that they don't even find out about on social media. They don't have access to it. They feel like the weirdo. I still remember my high school days. I was pretty weird in high school, which is very easy to imagine. I know.
No, you were a chain-smoking outlier, so don't forget
But
that.
at least I wasn't on my cell phone, Tim. I get credit for that, right?
Yeah. And look, that's why in the column that we're releasing, the Maxim column, is we call for the government to step in here, because parents do have an issue. It's like, oh, you're taking this away, but it is perhaps somewhat outsourcing and a bit lazy. But if the parent can say, oh, I'm sorry, dear. Yeah, no, cell phones are lovely, but it's not me, it's the law.
Yep.
And you don't want mummy or daddy to go to jail, do you? It just adds an extra layer of authority.
Of guilt. Exactly.
Yeah. No,
I mean, this is a really tricky thing, though, because it is, I suppose, we're experimenting on this current generation of teenagers and going, oh, gosh, let's see how they turn out. But at the same time, I mean, I've got a grandson. If he's losing it in the supermarket, if you give him a phone to hold or he can watch an episode of Bluey, he's happy as and doesn't tear the house down. It is very tempting, not just for teenagers, but for parents generally. It's generation digital native, I suppose.
Yeah, and look, there's ways that you can deal with that. Like I may or may not have been awake at 4:20 a.m. this morning with a 20-month-old who was listening to Coco Melon on the phone because he was inconsolable. The question is whether that, it's like, how often do you do that? It's just like, this is like lollies, okay? Lollies rot your teeth. So how often do you give them lollies? You give them lollies, and what environment do you give them lollies in? You don't give them lollies for breakfast. You give them lollies after they've done all the stuff that they're supposed to do, once or twice a week, ideally.
And you don't give them unsupervised access to the lolly shop, which is essentially what giving a cell phone to a teenager is. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And by the way, guilt is a perfectly legitimate form of parenting, Andrew. Don't tell me it's not, because I'm Catholic.
Exactly. It's in the Bible, honestly.
Absolutely.
I think it's, anyway, we won't get into the chapter and verse on that one. The government, of course, have taken steps to ban cell phones in high schools. Is this part of the answer in your view, Tim?
Yeah. Look, I think it was interesting. I've seen how it's evolved, because there was some pushback, but this is something that Jonathan Haidt, that author I was talking about earlier, says we need is cell phone free schools or smartphone free schools. Not cell phone. You can have a dumb phone. Dumb phone's fine. Text your mates, but it's the smartphone. So yeah, look, that's a positive measure. But are we going far enough? And I think there's sort of there's that sense that in our hearts, there's this God-shaped hole. And if we don't fill it with what is noble, truthful, and good, the world will rush in to fill it with garbage. Let's not let the garbage in.
It is a tricky one as well, though, I suppose, monkey see, monkey do, if the adults are addicted to smartphones. And the one thing to ensure that teenagers want to do something is to ban it and say, you're too young, you're too immature, you couldn't possibly cope with a cell phone. That just makes it more tasty, right?
Well, I think you're right that, and our kids are a mirror to our own flaws and occasionally our virtues. So this is an opportunity for parents to go, you know what, I need to do something about my cell phone use, because what the kids do, they see behavior modeled. You can say one thing, the talking points are there, but if they see you sort of plunging into an abyss of doom scrolling when you get a spare moment, they're going to think, oh, gee whiz, I want a piece of that too. So shape up, parents.
Exactly. Now, the articles are going to be on the Maxim website, not too far away from now, maxim.org.nz. Tim, thanks for the work you do. Thanks for joining us.
A pleasure, and congratulations on quitting the durries, Andrew. I knew you could do it.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.